The voice note was only 23 seconds long, but it shattered the quiet afternoon like glass falling in an empty room. Aariz played it once, then again, then a third time with his thumb trembling over the screen, because the voice on the other end was not supposed to sound broken, not supposed to whisper his name like a secret she had carried for years, and definitely not supposed to say, "I love you, Aariz, I always have," before the recording ended in a breathless silence. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the kind of love that waits quietly in the background, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that may need them today. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon in the old part of Mehran City, where sunlight spilled over the rooftops like warm honey and the streets smelled of fresh bread, dust, and blooming jasmine. Aariz had been sitting outside his father's small stationery shop, pretending to arrange notebooks on a wooden table, but really staring at nothing. His life had become a collection of unfinished things, an unfinished degree, unfinished dreams, unfinished conversations with his late mother, and an unfinished friendship with the one person who had never truly left him, even when he tried to push the whole world away. Her name was Meher Vera, and she had been his best friend since they were 12, when she had marched into his classroom with 2 missing front teeth and a purple schoolbag bigger than her back. She had defended him from bullies before she even knew his full name. She had shared lunch with him when his father forgot to pack any. She had clapped the loudest when he won a poetry competition in college, and she had sat silently beside him on the hospital floor the day his mother died, holding his hand while he cried into the sleeve of his shirt like a child. For years, everyone said they belonged together. Aariz always laughed it off. Meher always rolled her eyes. They were best friends, nothing more. That was what they told the world. That was what Aariz told himself. But the voice note changed everything. It had arrived by accident. At least, that was what Aariz believed at first. Meher had sent it at 2:14 p.m., right after texting him, "Ignore that. Wrong send." But the damage was already done. Her confession lived inside his phone now, soft and impossible to erase. Aariz sat frozen as scooters passed, schoolchildren ran under the sun, and his father called from inside the shop asking him to bring change for a customer. He could not move. He could only hear her voice again and again, tired, honest, and full of a sadness he had never noticed before. The problem was not that Aariz did not love Meher. The problem was that he did not know where friendship ended and love began. He had built walls around his heart after his mother's death, after his engagement to Syra collapsed, after he watched his father grow smaller under debts and disappointment. He had trained himself not to need anyone too deeply, because losing people had become the language of his life. Meher, however, had stayed. She stayed when Aariz stopped answering calls. She stayed when he failed his final exams and refused to meet anyone. She stayed when people whispered that he had wasted his talent. She stayed when he became bitter, quiet, and difficult to love. But maybe, Aariz realized that afternoon, she had not only stayed as a friend. Maybe she had been waiting with a heart full of words he never allowed her to say. He did not reply to the voice note for 6 hours. By evening, the sunlight had softened into gold, and Aariz found himself walking toward the community art center where Meher taught painting to children. The place was alive with daytime color, even as the day leaned toward sunset. Paper butterflies hung from strings. Tiny handprints covered the walls. Meher stood near the window, helping a little boy paint a yellow sun, and for the first time, Aariz looked at her as if he had been blind for years. She was not glamorous in the way movies made women glamorous. She had paint on her fingers, her hair was tied messily, and her blue kurta had a streak of orange near the sleeve. But there was something about her that made the room feel safe. She carried warmth without asking for attention. She loved people quietly, like sunlight entering through curtains. When she saw Aariz, her face changed. The smile faded first. Then came fear. He wanted to say something gentle, something brave, but all he managed was her name. Meher looked away, and in that small movement, Aariz understood that she had already prepared herself for rejection. She told him it was an accident. She said she had recorded it for herself, like people write letters they never send. She said she did not expect anything from him. She even smiled, but it was the kind of smile people use when they are trying not to fall apart. Aariz listened, and guilt rose in his chest like water. He thought of every time she had waited outside exam halls for him, every birthday she remembered, every grief she carried beside him without demanding anything in return. He wanted to hold her hand, but fear stopped him. What if he ruined the only relationship that had survived his worst years? What if love changed them? What if he failed her too? So he said the safest, cruelest thing. He said he needed time. Meher nodded as if she expected it. But her eyes, those bright stubborn eyes that had once faced down school bullies for him, filled with tears she refused to let fall. After that day, everything became polite. And politeness was worse than anger. Meher stopped sending morning memes. Aariz stopped dropping by the art center. Their daily conversations turned into dry messages about bills, weather, and family errands. The silence between them grew like a wall built brick by brick. Then, one afternoon, during a charity book fair arranged outside the old library, Aariz saw Meher laughing with someone else. His name was Xavier Noor, a photographer with kind eyes and a camera always hanging from his neck. He had come to document the children's art program. He laughed easily. He spoke to Meher with open admiration. Aariz watched from across the courtyard as Xavier handed her a cup of lemonade, and something sharp moved inside him. Jealousy was an ugly mirror. It showed Aariz the truth he had been avoiding. He had wanted Meher close enough to comfort him, but not close enough to ask anything from him. He had accepted her love in the form of friendship, care, patience, and loyalty, but when she finally named it, he hid behind confusion. That realization hurt more than jealousy. For the next few days, Aariz changed. Not suddenly, not magically, but painfully. He began visiting his mother's grave in the morning, when the sun was gentle and the world still felt forgiving. He spoke aloud for the first time in years. He told his mother about the voice note. About Meher. About fear. About how he had spent so long protecting himself from pain that he had started hurting the one person who never deserved it. One day, while cleaning old drawers in the shop, Aariz found a letter his mother had written before her final surgery. It was folded between prayer beads and a faded family photograph. In it, she had written that love was not the absence of fear, but the decision to stay soft even after life had been hard. Aariz read that line until the paper blurred in his hands. That was when he knew. He did not just miss Meher. He loved her. He loved the way she saved broken crayons because children still found colors in them. He loved the way she tilted her head when listening. He loved how she remembered the exact tea he liked. He loved that her anger was honest and her kindness never performed. He loved her in the quiet way people love home after wandering too long. But by then, Meher had stopped waiting. The turning point came on a sunny Friday morning at the children's art exhibition. The courtyard was decorated with ribbons, clay lamps, and paintings drying under the open sky. Parents moved through the displays, praising uneven suns, crooked trees, and houses painted in impossible colors. Meher stood near the entrance in a pale green dress, looking tired but beautiful, smiling for the children even when her own heart seemed far away. Aariz arrived holding a small wooden box. Inside were voice notes. Not digital ones, but handwritten transcripts of all the little things Meher had ever said to him that had saved him without her knowing. The time she told him, "You are not your worst day." The time she said, "Grief is love with nowhere to go." The time she said, "I will sit here until the dark passes." He had written them all down because her words had been lifelines, and he had been too wounded to thank her. At the center of the exhibition, Aariz asked the organizers for a minute. His voice shook as he stood before the crowd, not because he feared strangers, but because Meher was looking at him with guarded eyes. He did not make a grand speech. He simply told the truth. He said that sometimes the person who loves us most is not the one who arrives with fireworks, but the one who stays through our silence. He said he had confused fear with wisdom and distance with strength. He said he had received a voice note by accident, but maybe life had sent it on purpose because he was too blind to hear love any other way. The courtyard fell quiet. Meher's eyes filled again, but this time she did not look away. Aariz walked to her and held out the wooden box. He told her that he did not want to answer her love with a rushed promise, but with a changed life. He told her he had started therapy. He told her he had applied to finish his degree. He told her he was learning not to run from tenderness. And then, with tears slipping down his face in the middle of that bright day, he said he loved her too. For a moment, Meher said nothing. Then she cried. Not softly, not prettily, but with the exhaustion of someone who had carried hope for too long. Aariz did not touch her until she stepped forward first. When she did, he held her like he was holding something sacred, something almost lost, something life had returned only because he finally became brave enough to receive it. The children clapped without fully understanding. Xavier, standing nearby with his camera, smiled and quietly took a photograph of them under a sky full of paper butterflies. But love did not fix everything overnight. That is what made their story real. Meher still had wounds from waiting. Aariz still had fears from losing. Some days they argued. Some days she doubted him. Some days he doubted himself. Yet this time, instead of disappearing into silence, they stayed. They spoke. They learned. They rebuilt their friendship not as something ruined by love, but as the foundation that made love possible. Months later, on another bright afternoon, Aariz and Meher reopened his father's old stationery shop as a small bookstore and art corner for children. They named it the Unsent Note. On the wall near the counter, they framed one sentence in Meher's handwriting: "Some accidents are blessings brave enough to arrive before we are ready." People came for books, paints, notebooks, and tea. But sometimes, people came just to sit under the window where sunlight fell across the floor. Aariz would look at Meher helping a child choose colors, and his heart would ache with gratitude. He often wondered how close he had come to losing her because he was afraid to feel something beautiful. Near the end of every art class, Meher asked the children to record one kind message for someone they loved. Not because every message had to become a confession, but because she knew how many hearts suffer from words left unsaid. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries for more emotional stories of love, healing, and second chances. Special request: comment "I believe in second chances" if you have ever loved someone silently or received kindness when you needed it most. Years later, Aariz still kept that 23-second voice note. Not to replay Meher's embarrassment, but to remember the day love accidentally found the courage he did not have. And whenever sunlight filled their little bookstore, whenever Meher laughed from across the room, whenever a child painted the sun too big and too bright, Aariz smiled because he finally understood that the best love stories do not always begin with perfect timing. Sometimes they begin with a mistake, a trembling voice, and one heart brave enough to say what the other heart was too afraid to know.